books try to teach you how to add something to your life. More skills, more habits, more strategies. The Four Agreements does something far more unsettling and powerful. It asks you to start subtracting. It whispers a dangerous idea right at the beginning. What if almost everything you believe about yourself, the world, success, love, and failure was never truly yours to begin with? What if you've been living inside an invisible agreement you never consciously signed? Don Miguel Ruiz opens the book by gently but firmly pulling at the threads of that invisible contract, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. This isn't a book you merely read. It's a mirror that slowly forces you to recognize how deeply conditioned your thoughts, fears, and reactions really are. Ruiz begins by explaining that from the moment we are born, we are domesticated. Not educated, not nurtured, but domesticated in the same way animals are trained. We are rewarded when we behave the way society approves and punished when we don't. As children, we don't question this process because we depend on others for survival. Every smile, frown, word of praise, and harsh correction slowly teaches us how to behave, how to think, and most importantly, how to judge ourselves. Over time, we internalize this system so completely that we no longer need external punishment. We become our own judge, jury, and executioner. He explains that the human mind is like a foggy mirror. At birth, the mirror is clear, reflecting truth effortlessly. But as we grow, the fog of opinions, expectations, beliefs, and judgments slowly covers it. This fog becomes so thick that we can no longer see who we truly are. Instead, we see the version of ourselves that others have projected onto us, and tragically, we start believing it. This is how agreements are formed. Someone tells you that you're not good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, and if you believe it, that belief becomes an agreement you carry for life. Ruiz introduces the idea of the Book of Law, an internal rulebook that governs everything we do. This book is full of shoulds and shouldn'ts, rules about what makes a person worthy of love or respect. According to him, most of our suffering comes not from reality itself, but from how violently we judge ourselves when we break our own internal laws. Guilt, shame, and self-hatred are not natural emotions. They are learned punishments. We learn them so well that we now punish ourselves even when no one else is watching. The book then gently transitions into the core of its wisdom, the Four Agreements. Ruiz doesn't present them as moral commandments or rigid rules. He presents them as practical tools for freedom. Agreements that, if practiced consistently, can slowly dismantle the old agreements that keep us trapped. The first agreement is to be impeccable with your word, and Ruiz is very intentional about the word impeccable. He explains that the word comes from the Latin peccatus, meaning sin, and the prefix "im" meaning without. To be impeccable with your word means to be without sin in how you speak. But sin, in this context, doesn't mean moral wrongdoing. It means acting against yourself. Every time you speak badly about yourself, every time you gossip, every time you lie or exaggerate to impress others, you commit a small act of violence against your own integrity. Ruiz explains that the word is immensely powerful. It can create or destroy, heal or poison. Words are spells, and humans are the only creatures who cast them constantly. When you tell a child they are stupid, those words don't disappear. They become a belief that shapes the child's entire life. Similarly, when you tell yourself you're a failure, your body and mind respond as if that statement is true. Being impeccable with your word means using language consciously, responsibly, and lovingly, especially when speaking to yourself. He goes deeper by exposing how gossip is one of the most destructive misuses of the word. Gossip, according to Ruiz, is poison disguised as social bonding. When we share negative opinions about others, we spread emotional toxins that often circle back to harm us as well. He suggests that if we could eliminate gossip from our lives, an enormous amount of suffering would instantly disappear. This agreement alone, he argues, can completely transform your life if practiced sincerely. The second agreement is not to take anything personally, and Ruiz acknowledges how difficult this sounds in practice. Humans are deeply emotional creatures, and we instinctively interpret others' actions as reflections of our own worth. But Ruiz explains that nothing anyone does is truly about you. People act based on their own agreements, wounds, fears, and beliefs. When someone criticizes you, insults you, or even praises you, they are projecting their internal world outward. He offers a liberating perspective. When you take things personally, you assume that others know who you are. But in reality, they only know their own version of you, filtered through their experiences. Taking things personally is a form of self-centeredness, not arrogance, but unconsciousness. Once you understand this, emotional wounds lose their grip. Insults stop piercing so deeply. Praise no longer controls you. You become emotionally immune, not cold or detached, but grounded and self-aware. Ruiz connects this agreement to freedom from approval addiction. Most people spend their lives seeking validation, adjusting their behavior to be liked or accepted. This constant performance drains energy and creates anxiety. When you stop taking things personally, you no longer need to defend yourself or prove your worth. You simply exist, and that existence becomes enough. The third agreement is not to make assumptions, and Ruiz describes assumptions as silent agreements that breed misunderstanding. We assume others know what we want. We assume we know what others think. We assume silence means rejection, or a tone means disrespect. These assumptions create emotional drama without any factual foundation. Instead of asking questions or communicating clearly, we invent stories in our minds and then react to them as if they were real. Ruiz explains that assumptions are especially dangerous in relationships. They slowly erode trust and intimacy because people stop communicating honestly. We expect others to read our minds and feel betrayed when they don't. He emphasizes that clear communication, even when uncomfortable, is always kinder than silent assumptions. When you ask questions, you replace fantasy with truth. When you communicate your needs clearly, you give others the chance to meet you where you are. This agreement also highlights how assumptions keep us trapped in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood. Ruiz argues that most of this fear is imaginary, created by stories we tell ourselves. When we stop assuming, we reclaim mental clarity and emotional peace. The fourth agreement is to always do your best, and Ruiz is careful to clarify what your best actually means. Your best is not a fixed standard. It changes from moment to moment depending on your energy, health, emotions, and circumstances. Doing your best does not mean overworking yourself or striving for perfection. It means showing up fully in whatever condition you're in, without self-judgment. This agreement acts as the glue that holds the other three together. There will be days when you fail to be impeccable with your word. Days when you take things personally. Days when you make assumptions. Doing your best means not using those failures as weapons against yourself. Instead of guilt and shame, you respond with awareness and recommitment. Over time, repetition transforms behavior into habit, and habit into identity. Ruiz emphasizes that action is more powerful than intention. Many people intellectually agree with these principles but never practice them consistently. Freedom, he says, is not achieved through understanding alone, but through lived experience. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, truth over illusion, and compassion over judgment, you weaken the old agreements and strengthen the new ones. As the book progresses, Ruiz introduces the concept of the dream of the planet. This is the collective agreement humanity shares about reality, success, beauty, power, and worth. Most people are unconsciously living someone else's dream rather than their own. The four agreements offer a way to step outside this collective dream and reclaim authorship over your life. This doesn't mean rejecting society or isolating yourself, but participating consciously rather than blindly. He explains that love is our natural state, but fear distorts it. Fear of not being enough. fear of rejection, fear of loss. The agreements are essentially tools for dissolving fear and returning to love. When fear fades, authenticity emerges. When authenticity emerges, peace follows. The book closes by reminding the reader that transformation is not instant. It's a practice. Old agreements were formed over years, sometimes decades, and they won't disappear overnight. But each moment of awareness is a small victory. Each conscious choice is a step toward freedom. Ruiz encourages patience, self-compassion, and persistence, emphasizing that the reward is not perfection, but inner peace. In the end, the Four Agreements doesn't promise wealth, fame, or external success. It promises something quieter but far more valuable: freedom from unnecessary suffering. It teaches you that happiness is not something you chase or earn. It's something you allow by unlearning the lies you've believed about yourself. And once you begin practicing these agreements, even imperfectly, life stops feeling like a battle and starts feeling like a conversation you finally understand how to participate in.